Hey guys, tonight we drift gently into one of the softest corners of the cosmos, the sleepy borderland between science and dreams. You're lying there now, maybe on your side, the blankets curled like clouds around your knees, the faintest rhythm of your breath filling the room like slow tide water. Outside your window, the world quiets down, unaware of the strange, elegant machinery winding up in your brain. Because sleep isn't just rest, it's mystery, it's philosophy, wearing pajamas. And tonight, we're going to ask something softly impossible. Could sleep be a portal to a parallel mind? The science of sleep is ancient and new. We've charted electrical storms in dreaming skulls, mapped neuron waves cresting like ocean swells, and still, we don't fully understand what happens when you drift away. You lose time. You become someone else. You experience entire realities that dissolve by breakfast. And here's the kicker. You do it every night. The most surreal thing you do is also the most common. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, leave a comment with your location and the local time where you are. Let us build a sleepy little map of minds all dreaming together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Yes. You close your eyes, and there it is. That quiet, falling sensation, like slipping beneath the surface of warm water. Moment between thinking and dreaming. Scientists call it the hypnagogic state. But that sounds too sharp for what it feels like. This is not a moment you can point to. It's a melting, a soft surrender. Your brain begins to shift gears. Alpha waves fade, theta waves rise. Your muscles grow heavy, your mind grows light. You might see flashes, half-formed images, like thoughts trying on costumes. Maybe you hear a sound that isn't real, a door creaking, a bell, a voice calling from very far away. These are the early ripples of sleep, brushing the edges of your mind. And just like that, the day dissolves. You are now in the land of partial consciousness. Technically, you're not fully asleep, but you're no longer fully here either. You're in the vestibule between worlds, and the key thing to know is this. The brain doesn't just power down, it powers inward. There's a theory still debated that this state acts like a bridge, linking to modes of being. On one side, waking consciousness, sharp and sensory. On the other, dream logic, fluid and strange. But here you exist in both, like a ghost leaning through a mirror. It's in this state that artists, philosophers, and physicists have reported receiving their most bizarre insights. Salvador used to hold a spoon above a metal plate as he dozed off just as he fell asleep. His hand would drop the spoon, waking him with a clang. That brief dip into hypnagogia, he said, held treasures he couldn't find anywhere else. Einstein supposedly did the same. The boundary between the real and the unreal is porous here, soft like fog. And what slips through may be more than mere imagination. One strange, half-forgotten detail you might recall from nights past. You sometimes feel like you're falling. A sudden jolt, a snap awake. It's called a hypnic jerk. No one knows exactly why it happens, though some theories say your brain is checking whether you're dying or just resting. A somewhat dramatic move, really. And yet, as you sink further, even that moment of uncertainty passes. Here's where things begin to stretch. Perception loosens. The strict clockwork of waking time starts to melt. Have you noticed how long a second can feel when you're on the edge of sleep? Or how you can dream a whole journey in just a few real-world minutes? Your internal clock isn't ticking the same way anymore. This is the space where parallel minds might begin to whisper. Imagine this. If your conscious self is just the surface of the sea, what lies in the deep currents below? Could there be another version of you who only lives in these dreamlike states? One that thinks in color, moves without body, and remembers futures instead of pasts. It sounds poetic, but it may not be all fantasy. Neuroscientists have found that while one part of the brain slips into sleep, other parts stay alert. Sometimes this is due to stress or strange sleep patterns. Sometimes it just happens. You sleep, yet something within you watches. Is this the first flicker of a parallel mind? Think about how many decisions your brain makes while you dream. It writes dialogue, it builds entire rooms. It creates rules of physics just to break them. And you never notice. That intelligence, quiet, automatic, powerful, could almost feel like someone else. Not another person, just another you. A you without daylight. Scientists refer to this as distributed consciousness, the idea that your mind isn't just one thing, but many things working together, sometimes independently. And sleep may be the only time these versions of you take turns at the wheel, but you'll never meet them. Not fully. Instead, you pass the torch in silence, like two strangers sharing a single coat on a long night's walk. You rest, and another mind awakens. You may not remember their stories, their logic, or their ways of seeing, but you always wake with a faint feeling that something happened, just a shadow of a memory from someone you've never been. And maybe, just maybe, that someone was you. You drift deeper now. The last echoes of the outside world have softened to silence, and your body feels like it's made of sand or vapor. Time bends strangely here. It stretches and folds, becoming something else entirely. The part of you that tells stories about reality, your inner narrator, grows quiet. But the brain, far from resting, lights up in a new way. Inside your skull, it's not darkness, it's a theater, a vast, intricate stage. And even as your muscles lie still and your eyes stay shut, the brain begins constructing entire worlds behind the scenes. Tonight, we walk through that stage through the hidden geography of the sleeping brain. There's no single sleep center in the brain. Instead, it's a network of shifting activity, actions, handing off control like actors changing costumes behind curtains. As you drift into the first phases of true sleep, the thalamus, the great relay stations, loads its messaging to the sensory cortex. This is why you no longer feel the room around you in the same way. External input fades, and the internal orchestra begins to swell. Your brain waves grow slower, deeper. Delta waves emerge like whale songs in deep water. These aren't just brain static. They're markers of profound physiological change. Cells begin to clean house. Waste is flushed out through the lymphatic system, a nightly cleansing ritual that some researchers think may be as essential as breathing. Your mind enters maintenance mode, and yet something more than cleaning is happening. Picture the hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped structure curled deep in your brain. It's quietly busy reviewing the day's memories. It's filing away the important bits and, curiously, sometimes distorting them. It's not always a faithful librarian. Sometimes it adds or removes scenes. Sometimes it plays editor, not archivist. Why? Because the sleeping brain isn't a hard drive. It's a garden. It prunes and reseeds. It decides what your story will be tomorrow and that may not match what really happened. And as this memory gardening continues, another region glows softly, the default mode network. This is the constellation of brain regions that lights up when you read daydreaming or lost in thought. And oddly enough, it stays active during many parts of sleep. Even as the world shuts out, the inner you keeps chattering. But here's something curious. MRI scans show that during REM sleep, the areas involved in visual processing become nearly as active as when you reawake and seeing real images. Your brain doesn't just remember the visual world, it rebuilds it in real time. Without your eyes, without light, without the outside world at all. That's astonishing. You're not just watching a movie behind your eyelids, you're projecting it with internal light. And here, the question slips in quietly like a thought through a half-open door. If your brain can simulate a whole reality, how can you ever be sure when it's dreaming or not? We trust waking life because it's consistent. The floor stays under your feet. The trees stay where they grew. But in sleep, things are far more fluid. A hallway becomes an ocean. A person shifts faces mid-sentence, and you barely notice. This elasticity is part of what makes the geography of the sleeping brain feel so different. Waking thought is linear, but sleeping thought is topographical. You leap from memory to memory as though traveling across invisible landmasses. You return to a childhood bedroom. You walk through a version of your house that never existed. You feel déjà vu for events that never happened. And sometimes you find yourself in places that feel deeply familiar, places you've never seen, but somehow always known. That's a phenomenon some dream researchers call cryptomnesia, or the hidden memory. Others speculate it might be the brain testing possible futures, simulating them in empty mental space. But there's another possibility. Maybe the brain isn't just simulating, maybe it's accessing. It sounds like science fiction, But a few physicists have entertained the possibility that consciousness isn't purely local. Your awareness may, under certain conditions, entangle with broader information structures in the universe. The dreaming brain, unburdened by the senses and loosened from logic, might be especially receptive. There's no proof, just tantalizing questions. But the pattern fits a larger mystery. Your brain behaves almost like a landscape that folds in on itself when you sleep. Regions that rarely talk to one another by day suddenly link up at night. It's like secret passages opening between towers of a vast, ancient castle. You've likely felt this connection before, waking up with a solution to a problem you couldn't solve yesterday, or experiencing a rush of emotional clarity that seems to come from nowhere. As if a deeper part of your mind wandered the halls while you rested and left you a note on the door. And so we return to the metaphor of geography. There are places in your brain that only reveal themselves while you sleep. Maybe these places are old. Evolutionarily old, some nestled deep in the brainstem, the most ancient part of your nervous system. These are primal territories, built for survival, instinct, rhythm. Others are newer, like the prefrontal cortex, the philosopher's loft, always trying to make sense of nonsense. But during certain stages of sleep, the logical parts quiet down, and the emotional centers take the stage. This is why dreams can feel so strange and yet so true. They speak in a logic your waking self forgets how to understand. And maybe, just maybe, there's a kind of intelligence in the echo of a mind not bound by waking rules. Not higher or lower, just ... adjacent. So you drift on. Unaware of this internal geography as your brain sculpts worlds in silence, the sleeping self travels without footsteps, remembers without time, sees without eyes. And you, curled in bed, become a whole universe folded inside itself. No passport needed. You've crossed the soft hills of light sleep now. You are deeper, slower, quieter. Your limbs are heavy still. The body's edges blur as your awareness slips inward. Then, almost imperceptibly, something changes. A shift beneath the waves of your mind. Welcome to REM. Rapid eye movement. The most paradoxical of sleep states. You are at your most motionless and, yet neurologically, nearly as active as when awake. Your eyes flicker beneath your lids. Your breathing becomes irregular. And deep within your brain, a secret theater opens its red velvet curtains. The show is about to begin. REM sleep is your brain's private cinema, staging films no one else will ever see. These dreams are vivid, strange, narrative. They often borrow scraps from your waking life faces, places, worries, desires, but they never play fair. Time loops. Gravity shrugs. People you love say things they never would. And the central character is always you, though not quite you. The scientist in you might ask, why? What purpose does all this inner theater serve? The truth is, no one entirely knows. There are theories. Some say dreams are a kind of emotional regulator, giving your mind a chance to reframe difficult experiences, like trying on different costumes for the same memory. Others think dreams are evolutionary training grounds, way to practice survival without real-world risk. Still others believe dreams are simply the brain's idle hum, like a computer running background programs while you rest. But none of that explains the surreal, often poetic tone of dreams, the way they bend not just logic but meaning. And that brings us to something odd. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles reasoning, planning, and skepticism, goes mostly offline during REM. It's as if your internal editor falls asleep while the playwright stays awake. The result? You believe the unbelievable. You accept the absurd. You don't question why your childhood home is floating on a cloud or why the ocean is speaking Latin. It all makes sense until you wake up. Here's where things start to get quietly philosophical. What if the dreaming self is a different self? One that operates on symbols instead of language. One that speaks emotion more fluently than reason. You don't just dream about things. You feel your way through them, like walking blindfolded through a familiar house. Sometimes that dream you feels more you than the waking one. Think about it. In dreams you don't perform. You don't pretend. You just are, even when you're someone else. Which raises the soft, slippery question, who is dreaming you? If your waking self is shaped by conscious thoughts and decisions, then your dream self is a puppet of the subconscious. But the subconscious isn't passive. It crafts. It directs. It builds scenery and writes dialogue and casts co-stars with alarming precision. Often it creates a you who navigates dream worlds with an eerie calm despite the strangeness. This you is not surprised when gravity fails, or when the moon hangs just outside your bedroom window. In dreams, the laws of physics aren't broken, they're rewritten. Which brings us, gently, to one of the strangest possibilities. Maybe dreaming is less about memory and more about modeling. Your brain, in REM, might be running alternate simulations, parallel versions of yourself, living parallel days. Of course, science hasn't caught up to this idea. We're still trying to figure out why dreams even happen, let alone what they mean. But the data we do have tells us this. REM dreams tend to be more emotionally charged. They lean toward the surreal. And they often blend reality with invention so seamlessly that you can tell where one ends and the other begins. It's like your brain is asking, what if? What if that person had stayed? What if the bridge had collapsed? What if you had wings? Some researchers even propose that dreams serve as a kind of virtual reality simulator, allowing your mind to play out multiple responses to a single scenario. Not just what happened, but what could have happened, or what shouldn't have. A rehearsal space for your parallel lives. And so, nestled in REM, you float through scenes made of memory, fantasy, and possibility. Your dreaming mind is an improvisational artist, part philosopher, part cartoonist, part ghost. And the story it tells each night might not be random. It might be a kind of coded conversation between your waking self and someone you don't usually meet. Another self, a mirror mind, soft whisper of the parallel. You may not remember most of these encounters. In fact, you forget over 95% of your dreams. Scientists aren't sure why. Some think it's a flaw in the memory systems. Others suggest it's intentional, protective forgetting to keep the dream world from bleeding too much into the waking one. But sometimes, one stays. A single dream lingers like perfume on your pillow. Maybe it was strange or beautiful or haunting. Maybe it felt like a message or a memory that wasn't yours. Maybe it wasn't even a dream at all, but something that happened to another you. In a world where dreams are real and waking life is the illusion, it's hard to say, because the dreaming mind is silent in daylight. It closes its doors when the sun rises. But every night, when you return to sleep, it's there, waiting, building, becoming. And maybe, just maybe, it remembers you, even when you forget it. You're still dreaming. It's the world outside, your mind, your room, the air, the quiet fan hum is far away now. You don't notice the blanket over your shoulder or the way your hand rests gently by your side. Instead, you are somewhere else. Somewhere stitched from thought and instinct, woven by a mind that doesn't follow waking rules. And that mind may not be singular. Tonight, let us gently step into a strange corner of neuroscience one, where the idea of a unified self begins to unravel. 8. What if you're not just you? What if your identity is more like a chorus than a solo? This may sound strange, even unsettling, but softly, now stay with me, inside your head. The idea of you feels seamless. You speak with one voice, one set of memories, one stream of awareness. But the brain is not a single storyteller. It's a parliament, a patchwork, a network of modules, each with its own agenda, priorities, and processing power. And during sleep, those modules don't always sync. This is where the idea of split selves begins to glow in the darkness. Take the phenomenon of sleep paralysis, for instance. You wake up, but your body won't move. You're fully aware and yet unable to speak or react. Sometimes people feel a presence, something watching, something near. It's as if one version of your mind has returned to waking, while the rest remains in dream. And there's the curious case of people who talk in their sleep, or sleepwalk, or eat, dress, drive all, while technically unconscious. These are moments where agency fractures, where different aspects of your brain operate independently, as if an invisible understudy takes the stage while your main self naps in the wings. It's eerie, but it's also revealing. Conscious you isn't always in charge. Sometimes the brain runs its programs without you, quietly, competently, maybe even kindly. And then there are dreams where you meet yourselves, sometimes literally, A second you, older, younger, distorted. A version of you who speaks in riddles or guides you through impossible cities. Psychologists might call this the dream ego, a kind of internal projection. But the science doesn't yet explain why these doubles appear, why they feel so real, why they sometimes seem to know things you don't. Here's a thought experiment. What if your sense of self is like a spotlight on a vast, dark stage? When you're awake, the beam shines on one actor, but when you sleep, the light drifts. Other characters step forward, not imposters, just hidden versions of you, finally allowed to speak. There is some soft support for this idea in studies on multiple selves. Theory, a branch of psychology that suggests the brain maintains numerous self-models for different contexts. Social self, private self, future self, remembered self. In waking life, these blend into one narrative. But in sleep, those boundaries dissolve. You've likely felt this, waking from a dream where your reactions surprised you. You did things you never would in waking life. You made choices that felt true, but not you. Who made those decisions? Maybe it was another facet of your mind as shadow self, a parallel pilot. And remember those dreams where your perspective shifts mid-story? One moment you're you, the next you're observing yourself from outside. These aren't glitches, they're clues. They suggest that identity is more flexible than we think. That selfhood isn't a statue, it's immobile. It's a slowly spinning structure where different pieces take turns being center. Scientists are only beginning to map this. One study used brain scans to track how different networks activate during dreaming. They found that emotional centers, visual centers, and memory processors were all firing, sometimes in concert, sometimes independently. It's like a jazz band without a conductor, and yet the music still plays. But here's the poetic part. When those systems align just right, they create something magical. A temporary consciousness, a dream you, fully formed, believable, impermanent. And when that dream you meets a second dream you, that's not a paradox. That's your mind talking to itself. Literally. Some traditions, especially in indigenous and Eastern philosophies, have long believed that dreams are not contained within the individual. That in sleep, we tap into shared currents of awareness. That we meet not just others, but other selves. Modern science hasn't caught up to that idea. But it's asking more open questions than it used to. Because the deeper we look into the sleeping brain, the more we see that consciousness isn't fixed. It's not one light. It's a chandelier's crystal-catching light from a different angle, flickering, vanishing, returning. And maybe, just maybe, each of those flickers is a version of you that lives only when the others rest. So as you float here, breathing softly, held by sleep, think of the mind not as a single room, but a sprawling house. Some doors you know, others you've never opened. And still others may only appear at night, when the floorboards creak just right. You walk through those hidden doors in dreams, and sometimes, on the other side, someone familiar is waiting. Not a stranger, not a ghost, just another you, waving gently, saying nothing. 'Cause in dreams even silence speaks. You float deeper still, into the strange folds of sleep. Your body rests in stillness, perfectly unmoving, yet your brain continues quietly alive, pulsing with activity like a city seen from above at midnight. But here's the strange thing. Not all of your brain is asleep. Tonight, let's sit with a quietly unsettling truth. One that science is only just beginning to understand. Even while you sleep, something inside you stays awake. It's not just poetic metaphor, it's neuroscience. Researchers have discovered that during certain stages of sleep, especially light non-REM and REM, parts of the brain remain alert. Not all at once, and not consistently. But some regions simply refuse to shut down. One study, involving people sleeping in unfamiliar places, like labs or hotels, found that the left hemisphere of the brain often stays more active than the right. They call it the first night effect. Like a security guard keeping watch, this part of the brain stays semi-alert, monitoring the environment. Listening for unfamiliar sounds, sensing threats. You sleep, but something in you doesn't trust it. This idea of partial sleep is fascinating and strangely relatable. Haven't you ever felt half awake in a new bed? Like your dreams skimmed the surface of reality? It's no coincidence. The brain is capable of asymmetric sleep, a phenomenon also observed in dolphins and some birds. They can literally sleep with one half of their brain at a time, keeping the other half alert to predators. You too are built from ancient survival instincts. Beneath your rational thought is an organism designed for vigilance. But vigilance doesn't explain the other kind of awareness, something more curious than cautious. The kind that appears in lucid dreams. Lucid dreaming is when you realize, mid-dream, that you're dreaming. You look around and suddenly know that the world you're in isn't real, yet somehow it continues. That moment of dual awareness is deeply mysterious. Because your prefrontal cortex, normally asleep during REM, flickers back online. Self-awareness reboots. And now there are two layers. The dreamer and the one watching the dreamer. It's like stepping out of your own mind while staying inside it. What's even more peculiar? Studies have shown that during lucid dreams, people can sometimes communicate with researchers in real time. Eye movements, finger twitches, coded signals sent while fully asleep. Dreamers answering questions from the waking world. One mind in two states, bridging the divide. And that's more than strange. It's a crack in the wall. It means that some part of your brain, some subtle thread of you, is always aware, watching the theater unfold. It's maybe not in every dream, and not always clearly, but occasionally, unmistakably. This inner witness is hard to define. It's not the same as your everyday thoughts. It's quieter, older, detached, but not cold. Some people call it the observing self. Others think of it as the mind's backstage, crew keeping the lights on, even when the show feels out of control. But there's something even more mysterious. Some dreams seem to know you're watching. You've likely had one where a figure turns to you, mid-dream, and says something that lingers far longer than it should. Something that feels tailored, uncanny, even loving. You're okay, they might say, or it's time, and you wake, heart steady, unsure who said it or why. It's moments like these that make researchers and dreamers wonder whether there's more happening here than brain chemistry. Is there a deeper layer of mind, one that can surface only when the rest is asleep? Is that the true parallel self? Some theories propose that consciousness isn't just a light that switches on and off. It's more like a spectrum, a gradient. During waking hours, you operate at the high energy and processing sensory input, managing decisions, tracking time. But sleep draws you inward, down the spectrum, into modes of being where the usual rules dissolve. And somewhere in that spectrum, perhaps, is the observing self, the one who doesn't speak often, the one who lives behind your eyes, even in dreams. Not a personality, not a voice, just a presence, quiet, watching, remembering. It may even be why you wake from some dreams with a feeling, rather than a story. No characters, no events, just a sense. Peaceful, haunting, electric. It's as if someone deep inside you learned something they haven't told you yet. You carry those dreams like folded letters in your pocket, waiting for the day they make sense. And so, as you sleep tonight, know this. Not all of you is gone. Not all of you drifts. Something within stays rooted, watching with half-lidded eyes, cataloging emotions, stitching together meaning from symbols, adjusting the sails of your psyche ever so slightly. This silent sentinel might not speak, but it listens. It learns. It weaves your experiences into the larger narrative that is you, waking you, dreaming you, and something in between. You may never meet it face to face, but you'll feel it. In the moments when a dream echoes through your day like a bell still ringing, in the knowing glance of a stranger in a dream, in the half-whispered sense that you are never entirely alone in your own mind, because you aren't. Not really. Something is always watching. It's on your side. You've journeyed through shifting landscapes of thought, now stepped softly between flickers of the self, seen glimpses of a mind that watches you even while you rest. But tonight's question is older still, tucked deep into the folds of your dreaming mind. Why do we dream at all? Not just neurologically, though. We'll touch that, but in a larger, gentler sense. What purpose do these inner stories serve tonight? ULL consider a quiet theory that tiptoes through the halls of evolutionary biology, that dreams may be ancient experiments, not just random fragments of memory or idle whimsy, but simulated worlds where your mind tests futures, feelings, fears, a sort of built-in laboratory. Let's begin with something simple but strange. Even the simplest animals seem to sleep. Flies sleep. Fish sleep. Jellyfish creatures without brains have been shown to enter states that resemble sleep, which raises a soft, mind-bending question. If sleep is so costly, if it leaves you vulnerable, immobile, unresponsively, has nature kept it? The answer must be that sleep is not a luxury. It's a necessity. But dreaming? That's a different matter. REM sleep, the stage most associated with vivid dreaming, is unique. Not all creatures have it. In fact, some animals, like dolphins and certain reptiles, seem to experience very little REM sleep. Others, like cats and humans, have plenty. The evolutionary reasons are unclear. Still, one pattern stands out. Creatures with complex social lives and advanced brains tend to dream more. So here's the idea. Maybe dreams evolve not for rest, but for rehearsal. Think of a fox curled in its den. Its body lies still, but inside its skull, neurons fire. It dreams of running, chasing, evading. The dream isn't real, but the movements are simulated with eerie precision. The brain practices in the dark, so the body doesn't move thanks to a natural paralysis during REM, but the intent is there. And when the fox wakes, it's slightly more prepared. Apply that to you. You dream of arguments with people you haven't seen in years. You re-enter situations that never happened. You navigate loss, love, danger, joy, all within the safety of your own mind. It's clumsy, sure, symbolic, but the emotions are real. The physiological responses are real. Your brain doesn't care that the world isn't. It runs the script anyway. This is what some scientists call threat simulation theory. The idea that dreams evolve to help you mentally rehearse responses to difficult or threatening scenarios without risk. You dream of falling, of being chased, of being unprepared. It's not because something is wrong, but because something might be. Dreams sharpen you by presenting versions of your life that don't exist. But the rehearsal isn't only for survival. Some dreams feel experimental in a different way. You encounter strange buildings with no purpose. You talk to people whose faces change. You float through impossible scenes that defy physics and narrative logic. These aren't fight-or-flight rehearsals. They're conceptual playgrounds, which leads to another theory. Dreams as creativity engines. Studies have shown that people deprived of REM sleep have trouble solving problems that require novel thinking. Meanwhile, those who dream more often show boosts in creativity. In sleep, your brain lifts the usual filters. Ideas mingle that never would during daylight hours. A spoon becomes a key. A face becomes a map. A failure becomes a story about a glowing boat. You've likely felt this. That dream you had where the solution was nonsense, but made perfect sense then. The strange clarity you wake with, even though you can't quite remember what your dream was about. These are hints. Signals that your mind has been working, just not in the usual ways. Dreams may be the mind's wild sketches, trying out forms and feelings without judgment. Now here's where the thought bends a little further. If dreams are evolutionary playgrounds, who is playing? Who's making the decisions in those dreams? It doesn't always feel like you. Sometimes you're just watching. Other times you're being pushed by a logic you can't explain. Sometimes the dream even refuses your choices itself without your input. That suggests that more than one layer of mind is involved. The you that dreams and the you that is dreamed. And this softly leads us toward the idea of parallel minds again. If your brain rehearses versions of reality at night, it may also create versions of you to navigate those dreams. Some are close to waking you. Others are strangers. But each one is made of real thoughts, real feelings. They act. They decide, they change, and then they vanish when you wake. So, where do they go? Are they just puppets made of passing neuron flashes? Or are they temporary selves brief constellations of identity that lived for a while in that strange internal theater? Science has no consensus, but it has noticed this. Your brain doesn't treat dreams as meaningless. It records them. Not in perfect memory, but in emotion, in mood, in subtle, lingering ways. A dream can leave you happy or haunted all day, which means the version of you that lived it mattered, even if they're gone now. even if you never met them again. So, as you sleep tonight, think of your dreaming mind not as a passive screen but as a vast test chamber. One that's been evolving for millions of years. One that quietly rewrites you in your sleep. One that crafts, simulates, questions, practices. And sometimes it stumbles into something more. A story that doesn't feel like yours. It's a place you know but don't remember learning. A truth that comes from nowhere. Maybe that's when you're not just rehearsing. Maybe you're reaching. And maybe something in the dark is reaching back. You sleep on deeper now, through the soft silence of early morning. The mind has entered its nighttime rhythm cycles, rising and falling like tides in a quiet bay. REM, non-REM. REM again. Each wave brings a fresh layer of dreams, each more fluid than the last. And here, in this dream-thick space, a curious question begins to glow in the dark. Could your thoughts be quantum? It sounds too strange to be true, too small and too vast at once. But tonight, gently, let's drift into the quiet intersection of physics and the sleeping mind. Let's ask very softly whether your dreams might not just reflect imagination, entanglement. Begin with the basics. Your brain, as we know it, is an electrochemical machine. Neurons fire, signals move, patterns emerge. That's the traditional model. A warm, wet, whispering network of activity. But some researchers, not all, and not without controversy, have wondered if something smaller might be at play. Much smaller, they ask. Could consciousness arise, in part, from quantum processes? In the quantum world, particles can be entangled linked across space in such a way that measuring one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance. And while it's been proven in physics labs, its implications remain deeply strange. But what does this have to do with dreaming? Well, some theories suggest that your brain, particularly the microtubules within your neurons, might allow for quantum effects. These structures are so tiny, so delicately balanced, that under certain conditions, they could support brief states of coherence. In other words, little flashes of quantum behavior. It wouldn't be constant. It wouldn't be stable. But it might be just enough to influence consciousness. It's in sleep, it turns out, might be the perfect environment for this. During REM, the usual filters are turned down, the logical center's quiet. Sensory input fades, and the brain becomes its most metaphorical, intuitive, non-linear self. Some dream researchers suggest that in this state, the mind may be open to connections it normally can't perceive, not just psychological ones, but possibly, gently, quantum ones. Imagine this. Your dreaming brain as a receiver, not just a projector. A state where identity thins and the ordinary noise of waking life drops away, making room for stranger signals. You wouldn't notice them directly. You wouldn't dream in equations. But perhaps you'd experience flashes, feelings, images, ideas that arrive without origin. You might dream of a face you've never seen, a phrase in a language you don't speak. A landscape so specific it feels like a memory, but not yours. And maybe it isn't. Some have speculated carefully, with caveats that consciousness could have non-local properties. That under the right conditions, awareness might extend beyond the brain. Just a little. It's just enough. Not to float free like a ghost, but to entangle momentarily with patterns, thoughts, or selves elsewhere. You wouldn't call it time travel. You wouldn't call it psychic. But you might call it resonance. Like two tuning forks ringing at the same pitch across a silent room. This isn't mainstream science. But it isn't pure fantasy either. It lives in the in-between space like dreams do. Space where we don't know enough to rule things out, but we've seen enough to wonder. And if you are entangled with other states, other minds, even briefly, dreams would be the most likely doorway. Dreams are untethered. They aren't bound by your usual sense of self or place or logic. They float, they blend. They don't insist on reality, they play with it, which makes them excellent candidates for strange communications. Not in words, not in code, but in imagery, emotion, intuition. Have you ever woken from a dream with a sudden urge to do something you didn't understand? Call someone. Change something. Forgive someone you haven't seen in years. Could be just psychology. Or maybe, just maybe, something deeper brushed past you in the dark. Something not from you, but through you. Think again about those dreams where the world seems built with uncanny precision. A street you know in your bones. A person who feels real. A piece of music that leaves a trace long after you wake. Could these be echoes, glimpses, tiny moments of entanglement with a mind like yours? Elsewhere, we don't know. But we do know this. The brain is more than a machine. It's an emergent system, complex, nonlinear, sensitive, and very possibly capable of strange synchronies we don't yet understand. In sleep, especially REM sleep, that system becomes unmoored from reality. It wanders through forests it didn't plant. And sometimes it returns with seeds. Little thoughts, strange feelings, ideas you can't explain. Science doesn't yet have a name for this, but poets have always called it inspiration. Mystics call it communion. I just call it dreaming. And so tonight, as you drift through your REM cycles, imagine the possibilities. That your mind for a moment brushes against another. Not physically, not permanently, but like wind passing over the surface of still water, leaving ripples. You may never know when it happens, but the dream will feel different. It will feel like it wasn't entirely your own, and maybe it wasn't. You stir faintly in your sleep, the kind of soft shift that never quite wakes you, a twitch of the fingers, small breath drawn through parted lips. Your body is resting, yes, but your mind is still moving, always whispering. And tonight, it whispers about memory. Not just the ones you know, birthdays, passwords, the way your grandmother's perfume smelled in late August, but the stranger kind. The ones that arrive in dreams and vanish before morning. The ones that seem made of someone else's life, because memory, like sleep, isn't what it seems. You may believe your memories are solid, fixed, that they exist somewhere in the folds of your brain like photos in an album, but the truth is softer, stranger, more dreamlike. Memories are not things you store, they are things you reconstruct. Every time you remember something, you're not pulling a file from a drawer. You're repainting it layer by layer using the brushstrokes of the present. Which means each time you remember something, you're also subtly changing it. And in sleep, the changes grow wild. Let's begin with the hippocampus, again that seahorse-shaped structure we met earlier. During the day, it acts like a journalist, rapidly collecting and tagging your experiences. But it doesn't keep them forever. During sleep, it hands off those memories to the cortex, where they're consolidated, transferred, reshaped, embedded into the broader narrative of your life. But consolidation isn't copying, it's editing. Your brain makes decisions, what to keep, what to toss, what to blur. Sometimes it stitches together two different memories into one. Sometimes it fills in gaps with imagined detail. And sometimes it creates entirely false memories that feel no less real than the true ones. Dreams play a part in this. In REM sleep, your brain reactivates certain patterns associated with memory, particularly emotional ones. That argument from yesterday? The smell of salt on the air during a quiet walk? These fragments may be replayed, often mixed with older memories, and woven into dream narratives that feel both deeply personal and strangely unfamiliar. And here's the curious part. You almost never realize this is happening. You wake up, stretch, pour your coffee, and say to yourself, I didn't dream last night, but you did. You just forgot. Not because the dream wasn't important, because your brain didn't tag it for recall. Dreams are fragile. They slip from memory unless caught immediately upon waking. Scientists think this may be because the neurotransmitters needed to form new waking memories like norepinephrine are suppressed during REM. The dreaming mind creates vivid stories, but the waking mind forgets them, like fog melting in sunlight. Still, something stays. Not always in words, or even images, but in feeling. That lingering mood. That odd déjà vu. That strange clarity about something you hadn't thought about in years. This is the dream's quiet echo, and sometimes a dream slips the veil entirely, becomes a waking memory. Not a true one, perhaps, but one you believe is true. People have been known to recall childhood events that never happened. Vivid, detailed memories of conversations, places, traumas that dissolve under scrutiny. Some of these false memories may be seeded during sleep, dreams that felt so real, so emotionally charged that the brain filed them under fact instead of fiction. This is where things get softly unsettling, because if you can remember something that didn't happen, what else might live in your mind? Could you be carrying the memories of a dream self? The experiences of a version of you that only exists when you sleep? The sights they saw? The lives they lived? Sometimes people describe dreams that feel more real than waking life. Dreams where emotions are sharper, colors more vivid, thoughts more fluid. As if the dream wasn't a fabrication but a glimpse into something ongoing. Something that was already happening when you arrived. Something that continues when you leave. You might call it fantasy. But others, philosophers, mystics, and even a few scientists wonder if it's something more. There's a theory in consciousness studies known as mind-world simulation. It suggests that the brain constructs a model of reality at all times, not just in dreams. Even waking perception is a simulation, constantly updated by sensory input. And when that input is cut off, like during sleep, the model doesn't stop running. It keeps building. Which leads to this gentle thought. What if your dream life is just as consistent as your waking one, but hidden? A second stream of consciousness, fragmented, beautiful, mysterious, and mostly forgotten. What if you're not remembering dreams poorly? What if you're remembering two lives and confusing which was which? Every now and then the boundary blurs. You wake up thinking someone is angry at you, only to realize it was a dream. You hold a feeling of deep affection for a stranger you don't remember meeting. You recognize a place you've never been. These are soft fractures. Places where the dream life and waking life press gently against one another. Could sleep be more than rest? Could it be a return? A rejoining with another path, another self, whose memories run alongside yours but rarely intersect. Science isn't conclusive, but the patterns are intriguing. And tonight, as your own memories dissolve into sleep, you might find yourself in one of those in-between places. Not a scene, not a story, just a mood, color, a truth you can't explain. And when you wake, you won't know where it came from. But you'll feel it, like déjà vu, like nostalgia for something that never happened, or maybe did. You float now in the deepest part of the night. Time feels like a warm pool around you, formless, slow, minutes stretch. Thoughts curl like steam, and in the quiet hum of your sleeping mind, a deeper rhythm continues beneath the dreams and memories and flickering symbols. A math of the mind, soft, ancient, precise. Tonight we wander through the quiet algorithms behind consciousness, the silent patterns your brain follows even in sleep. It's not cold equations, but gentle pulses of possibility. Beneath your thoughts, there is structure. Beneath your dreams, there is shape. You don't notice it. You aren't meant to, but it's there. Let's begin with something as simple as waves. Your brain produces electrical waves at all times, even now as you sleep. These are not static, they shift with your mental state. When you're alert, your brain pulses in fast beta waves. When relaxed, alpha. When drowsy, theta. In deep sleep, delta, slow and sweeping, like an ocean tide seen from a satellite. These rhythms are not just background noise. They govern the flow of information. They tell neurons when to fire. They regulate timing, communication, attention. And during sleep, these patterns shift into a quieter, more spacious mode, one that seems to favor reflection over reaction. You could call it a kind of neural breathing, and it's beautifully ordered. There's something called the up and down state, A. Pattern in deep sleep, where large groups of neurons oscillate between activity and silence. Entire cortical areas pulse together, then fall quiet, then pulse again. It's as though your brain, in sleep, is practicing harmony. And some scientists believe this synchronized silence is crucial, that it's during these moments that memories settle, so that emotional weight is released, that the mind heals itself. All without your awareness. This is the quiet math of consciousness, not numbers and notebooks, but natural laws your body follows without question. Your heartbeat, your breath, the cycling of hormones, the gentle rise and fall of sleep pressure, regulated by adenosine. These processes are mathematical in the same way that waves are predictable, elegant, and never still. But here's where it gets strange. Your brain isn't just reacting to rhythms, maybe generating them. Think about dreams that follow arcs, beginning, middle, end. A problem and a resolution. A story that seems to make a narrative sense of it, if the logic is bizarre. Why do we dream in stories? No one knows. But some believe it has to do with predictive processing. The idea that your brain is constantly trying to guess what will happen next, not just in the outside world, but within its own thoughts. It's a kind of internal simulation engine. And during sleep, when external inputs shut down, that engine doesn't stop. It keeps simulating. But now, the rules are different. Now the story loops. It mutates. It spirals back on itself. And yet, somewhere beneath the surrealism, there's structure. Have you noticed how some dreams repeat certain patterns? How you keep ending up in the same place, or facing the same obstacle, or waking up at the same moment? These repetitions aren't random. They might be traces of the internal code your brain is running, quiet subroutines meant to organize thought, resolve tension, or reinforce learning. It's soft math, gentle loops. And sometimes, it shows up in stranger ways. Some dreamers report seeing complex symbols in their sleep mandalas, golden ratios, fractals, geometries they don't consciously understand. These may be projections of the brain's own processing, visualizations of structure too complex to describe with language. Oh, they may be something else. There's an ancient theory whispered in philosophical circles that mathematics is not invented, but discovered, that numbers, ratios, patterns already exist in the fabric of reality, and the human brain is simply tuning into them. If that's true, then maybe dreaming is a kind of unconscious tuning, not to facts, but to form. In your sleeping mind, unburdened by logic, unfiltered by ego, may be better at hearing those forms. This might explain why so many great discoveries have come in dreams. S-ring structure of benzene, Mendeleev's periodic table, Harmonian's mathematical formulas. These weren't the result of deliberate calculation. They arrived, whole, intact, like packages delivered by something deeper than logic. Could the dreaming brain, at rest, be closer to the source of structure than the waking mind? It's possible, because when you sleep, the noise quiets. The conscious chatter dissolves. And the rhythms of the brain can finally rise into awareness. Not as thoughts, but as feelings, shapes, sounds, stories. The poet in you has always known this, that the deepest truths don't speak in words, they whisper in patterns. And those patterns are inside you now, softly pulsing, gently glowing like constellations beneath water. So as you sleep tonight, know this: your mind is not idle. It is composing a dream, a memory, a theory, a story you'll forget by morning, but which mattered while it lasted. You are not just a sleeper. You are a system, a quiet equation unfolding in the dark. Somewhere in the early hours, the world beyond your eyelids becomes unreal. The bed beneath you is still there, of course, but it's distant, less solid than the moment unfolding behind your closed eyes. You are somewhere else, wandering through a forest that wasn't there yesterday, speaking to someone who doesn't exist, walking barefoot across impossible ground, and yet you believe it all. Welcome to the dream body, the sleepwalking mind. The version of you who moves through dreams like a ghost, a puppet, a traveler. Tonight, we'll gently trace the mystery of how your body can sleep, while your mind wanders. And we'll ask, what does this split reveal? Sleepwalking is one of the most curious and quietly unsettling phenomena in all of neuroscience. A person can rise from bed, open a door, walk downstairs, even hold a conversation, all while technically asleep. They'll have no memory of it, no awareness, no dreamlike context. Just movement, behavior, ghostly choreography. It sounds like fiction, but it's real. It tells us something profound. Consciousness and control are not always intertwined. In most people, the brain shuts off voluntary motor control during REM sleep. This is known as REM-atonia, kind of natural paralysis that keeps you from acting out your dreams. It's for your safety, and for the safety of the lamp beside your bed. But during non-REM sleep, particularly in deep stages, some motor functions remain accessible. And that's when sleepwalking tends to occur. What's fascinating is that, while the body is moving, the mind, the you who narrates, decides, remembers is offline. In technical terms, the prefrontal cortex is largely inactive. You're not thinking about what you're doing. You're not deciding. Your body is simply acting. It's as though another self buried deep in your neural architecture has briefly taken the wheel. And this isn't just true for sleepwalkers. Even those of us who stay tucked under the covers experience strange body-mind splits in sleep. You dream of running, but your body doesn't move. You dream of falling, but your muscles only twitch. You dream of speaking, but make no sound. And yet, in the dream, your actions feel vivid, complete, as if they really happened, is the mystery. Your brain is simulating movement perfectly, vividly, and you feel every detail. The weight of your limbs, the texture of the floor, the swing of your arms, all without motion, all without reality. It's a theater inside your head, and the actors are shadows, but sometimes the play leaks. In rare cases, people with REM sleep behavior disorder act out their dreams because the atonia fails. They punch, they kick, they leap from beds, and when they wake, they're stunned to learn what they've done. The dream had a body. The story spilled into the waking world, which raises a gentle question. Where exactly does your self live? If you can move without being aware, if you can dream of a body while your real one sleeps, if your conscious mind can observe from a distance, while another version of you acts out a script, then who is the real you? There's a quiet theory that consciousness is layered, not a single pilot in your brain, but a system of overlapping controls. In sleep, those layers uncouple. Your cognitive self drifts, your emotional self surges, your motor systems idle and standby. And occasionally, one layer takes over without the others. Like a ship whose wheel turns while the captain is below deck. Or maybe, like a house whose rooms take turns being lived in. This theory helps explain other strange behaviors, too, like night terrors, or someone screams in their sleep but can't be woken, or somnologue, sleep talking, where fragments of internal monologue bubble out in real speech. These events seem to come from a deeper self-aversion of you who lives in the basement of the mind, only coming upstairs when the others are quiet, and perhaps that self dreams differently. Perhaps they walk through older dreams, simpler ones, dreams without words or symbols, instinct repetition. You've likely had them, those dreams where you're endlessly searching, timing, swimming, repeating a task without end. Primitive, wordless, ritualistic. Those might not be your dreams. They might belong to the ancient mind, the lizard mind, the one who doesn't care about meaning, only movement. And that mind, in some of us, still moves in the night, still walks, still remembers a time before narrative. Of course, most of us never rise. Most of us remain still, our bodies paralyzed, while our minds roam freely. But the potential is there. Always, the ancient motor systems still hum in the dark, waiting for permission. And that's what makes sleepwalking so haunting. It's a reminder that the boundary between thought and action is thinner than we think. That our sense of control is a kind illusion, one that can slip away silently, leaving another self in charge. So tonight, as your mind dreams and your body lies quiet, remember, you are more than one thing. You are a sleeper, a walker, a dreamer, a watcher. You are a system in motion, even in stillness. And deep down in the folds of your brain, some part of you is always moving, gently, purposefully, without needing you to notice. You've been drifting for hours now, across landscapes that don't exist, through stories that only make sense in sleep. Most of them are forgotten. Some linger like perfume, and in rare moments, you awaken inside the dream. Lucid dreaming it begins as a ripple of flicker of awareness, where something feels off. You notice the sky is purple. You're walking through a version of your house that's never existed. A stranger calls you by a name you've never heard, and instead of drifting along, you pause. You recognize the fiction. You realize you're dreaming. That's when something extraordinary happens. A second you emerges, the observer, the inner narrator, the one who steps outside the story. You go from being the actor in the dream to being the director, the architect, and yet the world doesn't dissolve. It stays tonight. We're going to sit quietly with the mystery of lucid dreams, not just how they work, but who is dreaming when they happen. Because if you become aware of the dream, who is the awareness? And more curiously, who was dreaming before you noticed? Let's begin with the science. Lucid dreaming typically occurs during REM sleep. That vivid, emotionally charged dream state we've visited many times already. In most dreams, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-awareness, and critical thinking is mostly offline. It's why you accept the absurd. You don't question impossible things. But during lucid dreams, researchers have observed a partial reactivation of this region. The dream continues, but now it includes you. It's a thinking presence. It's a strange hybrid state, one foot in the world of sleep, the other in something like waking consciousness. Some people can shape their lucid dreams, fly, explore, summon characters. Others simply observe, in quiet awe, as the dream unfolds with new clarity. But the question remains, who's steering the ship? You are. But so is the dream. It's like walking through a city built by someone who knows your memories better than you do. You can make choices, but you're still inside a space you didn't consciously create. Every detail feels tailored. Every face is familiar, even if you've never seen it. So where does the dream come from? One theory is that dreams are generated by unconscious processes, emotional material, memory fragments, symbolic content, and that lucidity simply allows the conscious self to observe and participate. But the deeper question isn't how the dream forms, it's who is doing the dreaming when you're not lucid. And the answer may be another you. Let's return to the metaphor of parallel minds. You, the lucid dreamer, may only arrive once the spotlight is on. But something else has been building the stage, writing the script, setting the scene. You is subconscious, silent, skillful, and it doesn't seem to mind sharing the space. In fact, it may welcome you. Many lucid dreamers describe moments where the dream responds to their presence. Characters who become aware. Environments that change based on emotion or intention. It's as if the dream isn't a static world, but a living one, a space co-created by two parts of the same mind. And here's where things get softly philosophical. If you can wake up inside a dream, could there be a dream inside waking life? It's a question that stretches back thousands of years. The Taoist philosopher Zhuangzi once dreamt he was a butterfly. Upon waking, he wondered, was he a man who had dreamt he was a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming he was a man? Lucid dreaming blurs the line between real and unreal. It reveals that consciousness can exist in multiple states, each with its own rules, its own physics, its own version of self, and sometimes you meet that self. There are reports, quiet poetic ones, of dreamers encountering characters who seem aware. They speak as if they understand they are in a dream. Sometimes they offer guidance. Sometimes they ask strange, beautiful questions. Sometimes they warn you, you're waking up now. Who are they? Parts of you, perhaps? Or the voice of the larger dreaming mind, speaking through symbols. Maybe they're constructions. Maybe they're visitors. Science doesn't say. But many lucid dreamers report one feeling above all. Reverence, not fear, not excitement. Just a soft, overwhelming awe. Because in that state, you realize something profound. The mind is larger than you thought. More mysterious. More alive. And maybe not entirely yours. So tonight, if you find yourself suddenly aware within a dream, take a moment. Don't rush, don't control. Just look. Listen. Feel, ask yourself, not with words, but with wonder. Who built this street? Who placed that star? Who remembered this feeling I'd forgotten? You may not get an answer, or maybe you will, and when you wake, you'll carry that feeling with you. The soft truth that there are versions of you dreaming, designing, deciding who live only at night, you don't often meet. But when you do, it feels like coming home to a house you forgot you owned. You are the dreamer, you are the dreamed. And sometimes, just for a moment, or both. The night has grown old now, but your sleep is deep, unbroken. Somewhere in this quiet timelessness, the cycles of dreaming continue not just once, but many times. Dreams within dreams. Realities layered over each other like soft silk, and in these cycles, a strange thing begins to happen. Find yourself remembering moments that never occurred. Revisit places you've never seen. Relive conversations you've never had. Not memory exactly. Not fantasy either. Something else. Tonight, let's drift into one of sleep's strangest gifts. The ability to bend time. To carry you through experiences outside the ordinary clock into hours that last seconds. or seconds that seem to stretch. Forever, because in dreams, time is not what it seems. You've probably felt it. A dream that spans days or weeks' entire relationships, travels entire lifetimes, compressed into a single sleep cycle. You wake up shocked, disoriented. How could all that have fit inside an hour? It's not a trick of your imagination. It's a fundamental feature of how sleep plays with time in waking life. Your brain tracks time using a set of internal clocks neural systems that rely on rhythmic pulses, biochemical cycles, and sensory cues like light and movement. But in sleep, those systems change. The brain's usual grasp on time weakens. Input is gone, the external world fades, so time becomes elastic. In dreams, events don't follow duration. They follow meaning. You can travel across continents in a second, or stare into someone's eyes for what feels like years. Time loops. Events reorder themselves. You die and then wake up again. You skip forward, backward, sideways. Your dream. Self doesn't seem to mind. It goes along with it, as if it's always been that way. And here's where things get even more mysterious. Sometimes, your brain compresses time during sleep in a very real, measurable way. Sequence that would take minutes in the real world is experienced in just seconds during a dream. Yet the brain simulates it so effectively that you feel every moment. Your mind constructs a convincing illusion of linear time using fragments of memory and imagination. It's like a personal time machine. It's not one that moves your body, but one that moves your sense of experience. And it doesn't stop at the past. In dreams, you often imagine the future. You plan, you worry. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened. Studies show that your brain treats these imagined futures much like real memories, activating similar areas, simulating emotional responses, and leaving lingering impressions. Which means your sleeping brain isn't just remembering life, it's writing it. One theory, called the constructive episodic simulation hypothesis, proposes that both memory and imagination are built on the same neural system. Your mind takes pieces of the past and recombines them to simulate potential futures. Sleep may enhance this process, freeing the mind from logic and linearity, allowing it to build alternate realities without the constraints of waking life. And sometimes, those futures feel true. Have you ever dreamed of something that later happened? It's not in some mystical prophetic sense, but in the shape of a conversation, a location, a mood that you hadn't yet lived. Science calls this precognitive dreaming, and while it remains deeply debated, it continues to appear in anecdotal accounts across cultures and centuries. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's the mind noticing patterns before the conscious self catches on, or maybe it's a hint that the dreaming brain can, in some subtle way, reach toward what might be. And then there are those dreams that feel older than you, like memories from someone else's life, or from a version of you that's lived before, or will live again. Time in dreams is not only flexibilized, porous, the past blends with the future, the present vanishes. And in the center, there is only now, the dream now, always shifting, always building. You might dream of being a child again, but with your adult mind. Or of meeting your future self, older, wiser, saying things you needed to hear. You might revisit a memory only to find it ending differently, as if the dream is offering you a chance to rewrite it. And maybe that's what sleep is, a quiet room where time becomes clay, where the soul takes its hands and gently reshapes the narrative. Not to escape the past, but to make peace with it. You won't remember most of these moments, but they still change you, slightly, softly, like rain smoothing the edges of a stone. So tonight, as you drift through your final REM cycles, feel the looseness of time. Feel how the dream stretches and folds, how you move through lives that never were, and ones that could still be. You are a traveler now, not through space, but through selves. Through memory and maybe memory. Through imagined futures and alternate pasts. And the vehicle is sleep. Soft, silent, sacred. A time machine that doesn't move your body, but your soul. It's nearly morning now. The light outside hasn't changed yet, but your body knows. Deep in the pineal gland, melatonin levels begin to fall. Cortisol, gentle and steady, starts to rise. Soon your brain will signal your eyes to open, your muscles to stretch, your breath to deepen. But not yet, you're still dreaming. And in this final stretch of night, your dreams do something curious, something ancient, mysterious, and hard to study. They reach beyond the borders of your own mind. Not just inward, but outward. Tonight, let's explore one of the strangest ideas sleep science has ever tiptoed toward. Shared dreams, the possibility that sleeping minds may sometimes synchronize, not through magic or mysticism, but perhaps through something far more ordinary, a far more remarkable connection. Let's begin with what we do know. Human beings are deeply social creatures. Our brains are wired to respond to one another. Mirror neurons reflect the actions and emotions of others. Brain scans of close partners, even friends, show a surprising amount of neural synchrony. When two people talk, their brain waves can begin to align. Even their heart rates and breath patterns may sync. Now here's the question. If we can align so icily while awake, could something similar happen while we sleep? The science is limited. But there are hints in sleep labs researchers have. Notice that people who share a bedespeciator romantic partners often begin to synchronize their sleep cycles. Their REM phases overlap. Their breathing patterns begin to match. Or micro-movements mirror each other. Even their dreams sometimes follow similar emotional arcs, both partners waking in the same mood or having eerily parallel themes. Coincidence? Perhaps, but what if it's not? The phenomenon of mutual dreaming too, or more people dreaming of each other or dreaming similar content on the same night is often dismissed as anecdotal. And it certainly is anecdotal. Friends sharing a strange sense of connection, siblings dreaming they were in the same place, lovers waking with matching memories. These aren't experiments, they're stories. But stories matter. And when thousands of people across cultures, centuries, languages report something similar, science, even cautiously, takes notice. There's a soft theory and proven. Poetic that sleep may temporarily weaken the boundaries between minds. Not in a mystical way, but neurologically. In waking life, the brain works hard to maintain a clear, stable sense of self. But during REM sleep, that self loosens. Identity thins. You're not quite you anymore. You're someone else. Many people, or no one at all, and in that loosened state, perhaps, just perhaps, your mind becomes more receptive to subtle signals. Not supernatural ones, just ambient ones. Emotional echoes. The quiet pulse of someone else's presence, especially if that someone is close emotionally, physically, spiritually. Consider this. Have you ever dreamed about someone right before? They called you, or reached out, or shared that they were thinking of you too? Have you ever had a dream where you resolved a conflict with a person you hadn't spoken to in years, only to run into them the next day? These are the edges, the soft outlines of something we don't yet understand. But we do know that emotions ripple outward. Grief, love, fear, longing, these are not confined to the brain that feels them. They shape our words, our choices, even our silences. Why wouldn't they also echo in our dreams? Dreaming is a simulation, a testing ground, a story engine, a time machine. Then maybe it's also a meeting place. A landscape made of shared memory and imagined possibility, where two minds might briefly, unknowingly, wander into the same scene, not consciously, not even intentionally, but together. And if it happens once, who's to say it doesn't happen more often? Maybe we just forget. Maybe every night our dreaming minds touch briefly past each other in the hallways of unconsciousness. Leave messages and symbols, impressions, emotions. A laugh in the distance, a hand reaching out. A city you've never seen, but they have. And maybe when someone dreams of you, you feel it. A soft pressure behind the ribs, a sudden peace. A memory that isn't yours? Could that be connection? Could that be someone finding you in their sleep? It's impossible to prove, but not impossible to imagine. So tonight, as your final dreams play out beneath the stillness of your resting body, know this: you may not be alone. not entirely. Someone else might be dreaming too. And if the currents are right and the story is open and the symbols align, it might meet. Just for a moment, just long enough to remember. When you wake, that love can travel without maps, and that even in sleep, we find each other. You're nearing the edge now, not the end of sleep, but the threshold of waking. The soft hum of daylight thinking is beginning to stir. Your mind, still wrapped in fog, starts to piece itself back together. But before the light returns completely, let's visit one last dream-thin idea, the one that asks, is your mind entirely yours, or more gently? More strangely, could parts of it live outside your brain? It's a question that seems impossible at first. After all, isn't the mind just what the brain does? Electrical pulses, chemical flows, neural networks lighting up like a circuit board. That's the traditional model and a useful one. But tonight, in the hush before dawn, we let the boundaries blur. Just a little, and we ask what might live. Beyond the neurons. Let's begin with something grounded. Your body isn't just a container for the brainy, it's part of the mind itself. The way your gut processes emotion. The way your skin responds to fear. The way your breath changes your thoughts. All of these suggest that consciousness isn't locked away in your skull. It's distributed, extended. There's a theory in cognitive science called the extended mind hypothesis. It suggests that your thinking doesn't stop at the brain's edge. It continues through your body, your environment, your tools. When you use a notebook to remember something, or gesture with your hands while solving a problem, you're extending your cognition. You're thinking with the world. Now bring that idea into sleep. When you dream, your body is still. But is your mind contained? Or could it be participating in something larger? Consider this. Your sleeping brain responds to sound. Even while you dream, it listens. A soft alarm, the rustle of leaves, the voice of someone nearby, these can all be woven into the dream itself. This means your dream world isn't sealed off. It's porous, responsive. It reaches out to include the world and not just sound. The temperature of the room, the position of your body, even the electromagnetic fields around you may subtly influence how you sleep and dream. You are not a sealed machine. You are a system, a process, and maybe a node, a point of awareness in a web that stretches wider than one body. One brain, one story. Some researchers have proposed that consciousness may not be solely a product of the brain. Might arise from interactions between neural patterns, yes, but also between people, between systems, between the self and the universe. One fringe theory even suggests that consciousness might be a field like gravity. It's like electromagnetism, pervasive and visible, shaped by biology but not confined to it. In this view, your brain isn't producing consciousness, it's receiving it, like a radio, like a tuning fork. There's no hard evidence for this, not yet, but the idea has a poetic truth to it, because even in waking life, your mind is never entirely alone. It forms in relationship with language, with others, with stories, with space, and in sleep. Those connections may become even more mysterious. Have you ever had a dream where the world itself seemed conscious? Where the air felt alive? Oh, where? The dream responded not to your thoughts, but to your presence, as if it were watching you too. It might be fantasy, but then again, every thought is a kind of fantasy until it becomes experience. And if the dreaming mind can include your body, in your room, and your memories of someone far away, then how far can it really stretch? Could it momentarily include an idea drifting in the dark? Could it tangle, however briefly, with something not made of neurons at all? There are dreams quiet. Private dreams that feel like transmissions, not from gods or ghosts, but from meaning itself. You wake with an image, a phrase, a symbol that doesn't make sense, and yet feels like a message, not sent to you, just through you. These dreams come softly. They don't shout, they don't beg. They arrive like seeds on the wind, and you carry them, without knowing what. They are, maybe the mind is not a sealed room. Maybe it's a garden. Sleep is the moment the gate opens, not wide. Not for long, but just enough to let something through. So tonight, As you linger in this last chapter of dreaming, feel the air around your sleeping body. Feel how it holds you, cradles you, participates in your dreaming, whether you know it or not. You are not alone in your thoughts. You are not separate from your world. You're a part of something vast and subtle, conversation you forgot you were having. And maybe, just maybe, the dream is not only yours. Maybe it never was. The dream is fading now. The shadows thin. The air grows clearer. Your mind, still wrapped in softness, begins to rise like mist from a lake. A part of you is already stirring beneath the surface curling toes, shifting breath, sensing the pull of the day to come. But before you wake, we reach the threshold. The question we've followed all night glimmers in front of you now, like a lantern at the end. Of a long hallway, could sleep be a portal to a parallel mind? Not a mind far away in some distant realm, not a sci-fi alternate self stepping through a mirror, but something more subtle, more intimate. A second self you carry always. A version of you that only lives when the waking one closes its eyes. Let's follow it just a little further. You've seen the signs, the way dreams think in symbols instead of sentences, the way they solve problems with poetry, the way they bend time, construct entire stories, or meet you with answers before you even ask the question, all without conscious input, as though someone else, something else is doing the thinking, is that you're unconscious. Certainly, but even that word feels too clinical, too shallow for the depth of this other you. This you builds cities while your body lies still. It's this you writes impossible music, rewinds memories, speaks in metaphors, occasionally hands you a gift, an idea, a vision, a healing, and then vanishes before you can say thank you. Science has tried to name this you. It has spoken of modular consciousness, distributed cognition, dual process theory, subpersonal selves. It has mapped the thalamus and the cortex, the limbic system and the reticular formation. It has identified sleep cycles, REM patterns, and neurotransmitter shifts. But it has not yet explained the feeling, that odd, haunting feeling you get when a dream ends and you know that something inside you was alive without you. You wake up with words still in your ears, a face you can't name, a room you've never seen, but miss already. You wake up knowing something happened, something important. And isn't that what it feels like when two versions of you pass one another in the hallway of the night? One coming, one going, each carrying pieces of a whole. You sleep. They wake, and the handoff is silent. In lucid dreams, you glimpse each other. For a moment, the dreamer and the dreamed are one. The line blurs, the minds merge. And in that space, a moment, a breath, you realize you're not just dreaming. You're remembering not a different lifetime, but a different self. Not a place you'll visit, but a place you already are. What if your sleeping mind is not just a theater of thought, but a portal, not a metaphorical one, but an actual shift in mental state that gives rise to a different mode of being, a parallel self, not better, not wiser, not higher, just adjacent, slipping into view only when your ego lets go of the wheel, speaking only when you stop narrating, living in the places language can't reach, the you who understands without needing to explain, the you who lets go before you even know you're holding on, the you who waits in the quiet every night, not to replace you but to complete you. And when the dream ends, they leave behind something small, a gesture, shape, a dream face that smiles as if to say, I'll be here when you return. So sleep deeply, not just for rest, not just for dreams, but for a reunion, because maybe sleep isn't a break in your consciousness. Maybe it's a bridge, and maybe, just maybe, another you is crossing it, even now. Asterisk, you're almost there. Your breath is slow. Your body is warm. The weight of the world is still far away. There is nothing you need to do. There's no conclusions to reach. There's no answers to hold on to. Just the soft rhythm of stillness. The faint echo of all the places you've been tonight. Inner landscapes that flicker just beyond memory. Let them fade. Let them dissolve like stars into sunrise. The question, Could sleep be a portal to a parallel? Mind no longer needs an answer. It was always meant to be a thread, something to hold as you drifted. Not a door to unlock, but a window to open, just wide enough to let wonder in. So rest in that wonder. Let it settle around you like fog, like lullaby, like the sound of pages turning in a book you're still inside. And know this gently, you are not alone in the quiet. There are parts of you that live only in stillness, parts that sing only in dreams. You don't have to meet them to know they're real. You only have to rest, trust the dark, to breathe. And tomorrow, when the sun climbs back through the sky and the clock begins to tick again, you'll carry something with you. You won't know what it is, but it will know you. So for now, stay here. Let the world hold itself up without. You let your thoughts flatten into quiet. Let yourself drift all the way to the edge of sleep, and then beyond.